Hello, accounting students. This is Mrs. Bloomquist. Welcome back. We are currently looking at lesson 4 in chapter 3. Remember, chapter 3 has been all about journalizing transactions, and this last lesson has us starting a new journal page and looking at when we should end a page and start a new page, and then also what it is we do if we make mistakes while using a general journal. Okay, so the thing that you want to remember about completing a journal page is that whenever you're using a standard journal, you never want to leave half of a journal entry on a page. So if you don't have enough room on the page to do both a debit and a credit, you need to move to the next page. The reason for that is that your debits and your credits should always equal, and they won't equal if you split the transaction in half. So in order to be able to prove debits and credits are always equal, you start a new page whenever you don't have enough room to do both pieces of a transaction. Okay, when you're ready to go ahead and start the new page, because we're looking at a general journal, which is the most basic type of journal we use in accounting, all you really need to do to start a new page is put the next page number up at the top. So we can see here we're moving on to page 2 now. So we would note it's page 2, and then we can go on in our journal entries. All right, so what do we do if we make mistakes? If you're lucky, you will never make mistakes. But in the real world, where people actually do make mistakes, there are really two things that happen. The first is that if you make a mistake and you notice it before you go on to whatever your next entry is, you just go ahead and line through, like you see here. So you just line through the mistake that you made, and it looks like we were debiting advertising expense and then crediting cash. And in fact, that should have gone as a miscellaneous expense instead of advertising. So we just crossed out the error, and we went ahead then and put the correct entry right below. So incorrect, we discover it before the next entry is journalized. We draw nice, neat lines through the bad entry, put in the correct entry, and you're done. The other situation that happens then to us occasionally is that an error happens, like here where we have all these supplies that we accidentally posted for $300, when in fact we should have just noted that they were $30. So what we do then is we draw a line through whatever the error was, and then right above it, and you'll see in smaller print, is where we write the corrected amount. So you can see you would write in 30 instead of that 300. Okay. The other thing that might happen is sometimes the entry is posted to the correct accounts, journalized to the correct accounts, but we made a mistake with the amount of money we wrote down. So here we wrote down $4,300, but we accidentally did $430. If you find that mistake, you just go ahead and correct the $430 and update right above it that it's $4,300. Then we would know that our debits and our credits still match. Okay, so again, when would we know that a general journal page is complete? When there's not enough room to record both components of the journal entry. So you have to make sure there's room for both the debit and the credit. And then if the entire entry is incorrect, and we discover the mistake before we have moved on, how do we correct what happened? We draw lines through all of the errors, okay, and then we journalize the entry correctly on the next line. If in fact we've entered in a few additional entries after we made the mistake and before we find it, well, that's when we draw lines through wherever the errors are, but then we record the correct items on the same line, just immediately above wherever we wrote down the incorrect information that now has the line through it. Okay, lesson 4 is very short, which is pretty great. The one thing that you should really be thinking about as we wrap up this chapter and we reflect on the end of journalizing transactions would be, what do you think about if your accountant or your bookkeeper or whoever's managing your books makes errors and then corrects them in their journal? Do you think it reflects poorly on that person if there are errors in the journal that are corrected? So you would want to be developing some thoughts on that, and then make sure that you can think about how that would relate to what we've learned about the accounting equations so far. If you have any questions, feel free to stop and see me. Otherwise, go ahead and make sure that you have the work together and on your own complete, as well as moving on then to the application and mastery problems for Chapter 3. Good luck!